So today, let's talk about the five versions of you that you have to grieve on your way up. For your information, every level of growth demands a funeral for the person you once were. And on that note, you have to understand that every successful person that you admire is standing on the graveyard of their former self. But the only question is whether you will build one of your own. Emmanuel Noir Jr. Now, let's talk about growth. Growth is not just about adding more to your life, it's also about losing parts of your life that you once thought were permanent. No one tells you this when you're chasing success, but every time you level up, there's a funeral happening quietly in the background. A funeral for old versions of you. And grieving those versions is often harder than chasing the next milestone. I felt this in my life. From being a broke 20 something hustling through sales and cold calls that got hung up on to becoming a father, husband, and man that carries not just ambition, but responsibility. The climb isn't just about the money or career growth. Transformation also occurs, and transformation always comes at a cost. So, on that note, here are five versions of you you have to bury if you truly want to rise. Number one, the you who believed comfort was the goal. When you're younger, you think life is about finding a soft landing like stable income, easy weekends, and no turbulence. But growth doesn't respect any comfort zones. If you want more, you often have to leave behind the versions of you who believed life should always be easy. That means late nights on the phone when others are asleep. It means saying no to short-term enjoyment because you're building something long-term. It means risking rejection in sales calls, business ventures, or personal decisions. The depth of this version hurts because who doesn't want life to be smooth? But once you accept discomfort as the price of progress, you start living differently. Number two, the you who needed everyone's approval. I had to grip this one personally. When you start, especially in sales or business, you want everyone like you, everyone to be like you, and everyone to like you. And every no on a cold call, for instance, feels like a personal attack, and every criticism hits your chest, and sometimes even in family or friendships, you feel this need to prove yourself. But on the way up, you realize approval doesn't always pay the bills. Instead, respect does, execution does, and ultimately impact does. You will bury the part of you that chases validation not because you stop caring about people, but because you learn not everyone is meant to clap for you. Number three version, the you who confused busyness with progress. There's a version of you that loves to be and looking busy, especially with stacked schedules, constant motion, and late nights scrolling emails like a badge of honor. But busyness is a drug as it feels like growth, but delivers little. To rise, you will bury that version of you and replace it with focus. Focus on the one thing that actually moves the needle. Focus on quality over quantity. Focus on fewer and better habits. The grief is subtle because busyness always feels important, but once you experience what true progress feels like or looks like, you never want to go back. Number four, the version of you who couldn't let go of certain people. Now, this one is brutal because as you rise, some people won't come with you. Not because they're bad, but because your paths are different. Maybe it's the friend who only calls when there's a gossip. Or maybe it's the old colleague who doesn't believe you can make it. Maybe it could be the version of your social cycle that only knows you as the guy who, and can accept your new self. Grieving these relationships always feels like tearing your chest open. But growth demands it because you can't drag everyone up the mountain, as some people are only meant to share certain chapters, not the whole book. The number five version is the one of you who believed success would fix everything. Now, this is the hardest funeral of all because there's a younger version of you who believes if I make X amount of money, if I just get married, if I land that dream job, then I'll finally feel enough. But I buried that version when I realized that success doesn't cure insecurity, it amplifies it. Fatherhood didn't erase my doubts, it made me confront them. Closing bigger deals didn't make me fearless. It tested whether I could handle rejection at a higher level. Success doesn't always give you more. Instead, it gives you more responsibility, not less. And more exposure, not less. And even more chances to confront yourself, not escape from yourself. Now, to be fair, grieving that illusion is painful because it means realizing that happiness was never about arriving as much as it was about building peace with yourself at every stage. Now, for context, let's draw some inspiration from the story of how Francis Ngannou went from a sand quarry worker in Cameroon to burying that self to chasing boxing and reinvented himself as a UFC heavyweight champ before becoming a crossover boxing star. Now, here's the full story. In the small village of Bati, Cameroon, a boy spent his childhood digging in the sand quarries. Now, his hands blistered, his back was always bent under the weight of shovels and sacks, and his stomach was often empty. Now, at 10 years old, Francis Ngannou was already walking like a man, not out of choice, but out of survival. Now, poverty had written a script for him. Stay in the village, endure, and accept a life of struggle. But deep inside, Ngannou carried a restless seed of defiance, one certain that he would not die as a quarry boy. Now, he buried that version of himself, and the day he did that, he decided that his life would be bigger than the dust and the gravel of Batia. At 26 years, he left Cameroon with nothing but the absurd dream of becoming a boxer. His journey to Europe was not romantic at all. In fact, it was very brutal as he journeyed through the Sahara, through the Spanish detention camps, and through the streets of Paris, where he slept in parking lots and survived on scraps. To the outside world, he was just another nameless immigrant, faceless in the crowd, and a man without papers or without a future. But Ngannou knew that to rise, he had to hold a funeral for that identity too. He buried the hopeless immigrant, the man Paris wanted to erase. In a small gym in Paris, luck and persistence found him, and basically he met his opportunity as a coach gave him a chance to train. Ngannou's body was already shaped by years of hardship, and immediately responded like fire to oxygen. Soon he was fighting, winning and destroying opponents with a kind of power the world has never seen. The UFC signed him and he became the Predator, the most feared man in mixed martial arts. Yet, glory has a way of exposing what pain cannot. And when Ngannou fought for the UFC heavyweight title in 2018, he was humbled and defeated. Written up as another hard story that burned out too quickly. But Francis had buried too many versions of himself to stop now. He dug another grave, but this time for the reckless knockout artist who thought raw power was enough. What rose from that burial was a disciplined champion who was way smarter, patient, and ruthless when it counted. In 2021, he silenced the doubters by knocking out Stipe Mistook, the most decorated heavyweight in UFC history, and became the heavyweight champion of the world. Now, from the sand quarries to the pinnacle of combat sports, Francis Ngannou had turned his life into an improbable meet. But even then, he refused to let one triumph define him. He left the UFC at his peak, chasing what many called foolish dream, boxing. Against Tyson Fury, the undefeated heavyweight king, Ngannou was expected to be humiliated. Instead, he knocked Fury down, nearly beat him, and stunned the world. In that ring, he buried one more identity: the idea that he was only an MMA fighter, only one thing, or only what people said he could be. Francis Ngannou life is not just a single rise. It is a series of funerals and resurrections. The quarry boy, the homeless immigrant, and the reckless fighter. But while each version was necessary, none could stay. To become the man the world now calls a champion, Francis had to grieve himself again and again, until what remained was nothing but destiny. Honestly, every level of growth is a burial ground, and every person you're becoming is built on the graves of who you once were. But the paradox is that grieving those old versions isn't about hating them as much as it is about honoring them. They carried you as far as they could, but they can't carry you further, as the future requires you to have a lighter road and load. So ask yourself today, which version of you needs to be buried so the next version can breathe? By the way, did it spark a new way of thinking? Don't forget to join the Daily Life Success community, where driven individuals like you come together to grow in purpose, mindset, and habits that create lasting success. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.